Coming up, a rocket launch, a turbopump in Philae is getting ready to land. Plus, we bring on Doug and Ken to talk about the NTSB findings from SpaceShipTwo. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. Welcome to Tomorrow, episode 7.34 for Saturday, November 8th, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. Joining us not this episode will be Carrie Ann. She's actually on an airplane and will hopefully be here for After Dark, but we're not quite sure yet. We did want to give a huge thank you to all the patrons of Tomorrow who helped make this episode go. This list is getting a little bit longer and longer. I'm going to try something new on this episode. Let me know if you guys like it. And I want to give out a shout out to the new patrons in this particular category, Mom and Dad Dog. Thank you for becoming patrons of Tomorrow at the premier level. That's $10 or more. You can get more information on how to help crowdfund this show over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, from last week to this week, there's a lot of new information that came out from the National Transportation Safety Board, or the NTSB. So we have brought back Doug Messier of Parabolic Arc and Ken Brown, who took those amazing photographs that you've seen all over AP News of SpaceShipTwo while it was breaking apart. So welcome back to the show, guys.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, Ben.
So what is some of the new stuff that has happened that has come out of the NTSB between last week's show, when we really knew nothing, and this week?
Well, the initial belief was that there was some sort of a propulsion system problem. But then on Sunday night, the NTSB, which is investigating this, said that the feather mechanism had been deployed too early in the flight, and that was a real shocker. It's something I don't think anybody saw coming. So basically, the co-pilot, Mike Alsbury, was supposed to deploy that feather no earlier than the ship reaching Mach 1.4, and he deployed it just after the ship reached Mach 1.0. And they're still investigating as to why he might have done that. Did he just simply make a mistake? Were there other things that were going on? Did he see bad data? It's hard to speculate about that, and Ken can probably talk about the technical sides of that.
Yeah, we have to stress that the NTSB has made no findings yet, and they're very strenuously telling people that what they're giving out are facts. These are things they have seen. This is data that they have from the telemetry. They're making no analysis, no conclusions, nothing. But what they have said about the feather system unlocking dovetails very nicely into the photos. I sent these photos off to an aerodynamicist I've worked with before, and he looked at it and he said, "Hey, go back and toggle through. You'll see the feather moved." Now, he didn't deploy the feather. I think more properly that it's a two-step process. They have to unlock it first and then deploy it. So, and the big question is, why would you pick a velocity rather than an altitude? Unfortunately, when it was unlocked, that was at a point in the flight where there's the most amount of aerodynamic force on the airframe when you're in the transonic region, right around Mach 1. So you have a tremendous amount of leverage on the mechanism that would deploy the feather, and perhaps it was too much, and there was no way that it could hold the boom steady in that airflow, so it moved. It came up. That caused the vehicle to pitch over. This is conjecture right here. This is just from looking at the photos, trying to make sense of what we've been told. It flipped over. It went from pointing straight up to pointing straight down in somewhere between a half and 3/4 of a second. So at Mach 1. So that's an extremely violent maneuver, and probably no way for the airframe to hold together at that point.
Right, so going backwards just one step, for anyone who doesn't know, can you describe what the feather itself is? Because you got that two-part vehicle. Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, the vehicle itself, so I can kind of do a visual here, with the wings sticking out. So trying to get it out of my face here. And the boom's coming out the back. And here we go. The feather system, the wings and the booms on the end will come up. And then when it's coming back down, it'll act like a shuttlecock. going through the atmosphere. It will passively keep the vehicle at the proper angle and altitude. It also gives it the most amount of drag, so it'll keep it from going too fast as it comes back down. That's why a reason why they might want to unlock the feather at a certain point in the flight, even while under powered flight, to make sure that they can't. Because if they do a full profile and they get all the way up to altitude into space and they can't unlock the feather, then the vehicle's going to come back with it undeployed in its regular configuration, and they'll overspeed. They'll go too fast for the airframe, and the bits will come apart. We'll see pretty much the same thing that we saw, where parts fall off, they lose control, they crash because they have no more aircraft.
And we don't know at the current time as to why they were doing that test at 1.4, and we need to go back and look, because they have used the feather before in flight on previous test flights and tested it. And the question that I have, and I don't have an answer to that yet, is under what conditions did they do that? Was this a different type of a test, and why were they doing it, and was that a smart thing to do? And those are all questions that I think will come out in the weeks and months ahead.
And that's part of the, as you mentioned, some of the questions that we have. We know for a fact that it was unlocked. There is video showing the co-pilot unlocking the feather. The question is now, why? So it was unlocked too early. It was supposed to be unlocked at Mach 1.4, but was there an instrumentation problem? Did he think he was at Mach 1.4? Did he accidentally do it too early? We don't know the why. We just know simply that it was unlocked. But it is a two-step process. You unlock it, and then you're supposed to engage it. The theory being at this point, and this is all conjecture and speculation, which is the aerodynamic forces on the boom once it was unlocked were so hard that they just pressed on it really hard and then forced it down. Is that a correct statement?
Exactly. I mean, it's like putting a 6-inch piece of pipe on a wrench because you've got a stubborn bolt. Now you've got this massive amount of leverage. Similar type of situation. You've got a pivot point that this feather moves around, and you've got this big long boom behind it. And if there's a lot of air pressure on there, it's going to move. The mechanism that actuates it is not going to have enough power, enough strength to hold it back, and it's going to move. And if it moves, it's not just that part moving. We got to get into Newtonian mechanics, and both things are going to move. The fuselage is going to move. The feather is going to move like this. Then they're going to put the fuselage canted into the airstream. The air is going to catch it. It's going to take over and flip the vehicle.
Yeah. And the one thing that came out of this Sunday press conference, or might have been Monday, one of the press conferences by NTSB, the last one that they had, was that they were forming a human performance group within the investigation team, and that's very relevant. And what that does, will look at the interactions between the pilots and the vehicle, what the vehicle was showing them. It will look at training. It will look at the flight card. It will look at all those things that might have caused Alice Berry to do that early. And so that, I think that was very relevant, and we'll see where that goes. But they're going to look very carefully into things like the safety culture at Scaled and at Virgin Galactic, and look at what the plans were probably for flight testing beyond this flight. So there's a lot more.
Ooh, we may have lost him, but continuing on with that thought process, there's a lot more information that we need now. Mike Alsbury was the co-pilot who unfortunately also lost his life, and we've seen in traditional media a lot of people saying, hey, it may have been pilot error or something along those lines. And we don't actually know that. As Doug and Ken were saying, it could be anything. It could be the culture, it could be instrumentation problem, it could be anything at all. So it is way too early to come to any conclusions. Now, there has been a GoFundMe campaign set up. We're going to put that link in the show notes, but it's gofundme.com/Mike Alsbury, and you can see they were targeting, I believe, $125,000. They're already over that at $129,000, just under $130,000. But every single dollar helps, and this is going to the memorial fund for the family, for the funeral arrangements, and for everything else. So I think we've lost Ken and Doug for this particular segment, but that's pretty much where we're at. The NTSB has said, look, we found the parts of the motor intact. So the oxidizer tank and the propellant tank are basically intact. And had it been an engine failure, one would expect the tanks to have ruptured or something really catastrophic to have gone wrong with the tanks. And since that did not happen, and since we kind of have visual representation of the aeroframe breaking apart, and we see that the unlock mechanism was moved too early, we're kind of come to that conclusion that there was something to do aerodynamically as opposed to something with the engine, even though it was a test of a new fuel and whatnot. So all right, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got other space news. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get started, I did want to give a huge shout out to all the patrons of Tomorrow who helped make this specific episode happen. These are the people who've contributed at least $5 to this specific episode. And this week, the new patrons are, and forgive my pronunciation, you guys know I am terrible at this, but I'm going to try regardless. We've got Solomon and Andrew, who are at the very end of the list. Those are our new patrons this week, so thank you guys very much for becoming producers of Tomorrow. If you'd like to become a producer of Tomorrow, you can get more information on how to help crowdfund our show over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, we do have some space news we wanted to get into. You saw in the calendar that we just rolled that there were no upcoming launches, and actually we rolled that same thing last week. And a great Twitter account, we were talking about this in the chat room before, is the account Next Launch. So if you want to get Twitter updates as to when the next launch is happening, follow at Next Launch on Twitter. And last week we said there were no launches, which was true. That was the data we have. However, there was actually a Russian launch, a Japanese payload, the R-36M, and I think we have that launch coverage. Dutta, go for it if you've got it. This launched Thursday, November 6th at 7:35 Coordinating Universal Time. That was on a 111-foot tall Dnepr rocket, which is a decommissioned Soviet-era ballistic missile. This was carrying the Advanced Satellite with New System Architecture for Observation, or ARSNO-1. That was a Japanese satellite, and it is an imaging satellite. It can actually get imaging down to 20 inches across, or about a half meter. So about yay far across is the resolution that it can get up from orbit. This is the first of the satellites that they're going to launch, and they're going to launch many more as the years go by. So we talked last week also about the Antares failure. This was the rocket that Orbital Sciences has, and we actually kind of speculated that we thought it was a stage 1 failure, an engine failure, based on what we were seeing. So we've got some slow motion footage. We took the footage, we slowed it down. This is what it looks like. And it's basically, you can see the explosion begin to happen at the bottom of the vehicle. And it sounds like officials agree. They do believe it is a stage 1 failure, specifically likely something to do with a turbopump in one of the engines, or something radically impacted one of those turbopumps in one of the engines. This failure happened on October 28th. So those are the AJ-26 engines on the Antares rocket that now you can just watch it in slow motion and start coming back down. At this point, the failure has occurred. So the turbopump, for those who don't know, basically you have to pump fuels, massive amounts of fuels, into your engine for the combustion. And so you basically have what I'll call a rocket engine inside of a rocket engine. These turbopumps are intense. They are insane, and they move a lot of liquid very, very quickly. And when you have one of them fail, it is a very violent event. So it very well could be a turbopump. Now, the investigation is still very early, so it may not be, we don't know, but all eyes are on that AJ-26 engine at this time. So moving forward, Antares, they're going to be putting a different engine most likely on the bottom of it. So they'll actually upgrade the vehicle to something a little bit newer and better. They're looking at the RD-193. That's a little bit of speculation. Orbital hasn't announced what they're actually going to use at this time. But even outside of that, Orbital is saying, we can still fly and make our missions to the International Space Station. So we'll still be able to put the Cygnus spacecraft, which is the part that goes on top that goes up to the International Space Station, we'll drop that on another rocket somewhere. They're looking at 3 different launch providers. One is in Europe, so we're going to speculate that that's Orion Space because, I mean, it's probably Orion Space at that point. And then 2 in the US. It could be SpaceX and United Launch Alliance, but I'm going to throw out there that Orbital and ATK are merging, and ATK did have that Liberty rocket, which has substantially more lift capability than the Antares. I don't know the price of the Liberty rocket, and I don't know, we have about a $240 million price tag for Cygnus and Orbital combined, so I don't know if it actually financially makes sense to use the Liberty rocket. But again, from a speculation standpoint, wouldn't it be interesting if they brought Liberty back to life and launched Cygnus on top of Liberty instead, that ATK all-solid fuel rocket? No idea if it's possible, complete and total speculation, but an interesting concept to think about nonetheless. All right, moving right along, this is going to be awesome. Check out the screenshot. This is Comet 67P CG. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. You guys know I'm going to fail at that. Now, we spent the better part of 10 years getting Rosetta spacecraft. It launched in 2004. It made it there earlier this year in 2014 to this comet, to 67P. And now the most dramatic part of the mission is about to happen. The Philae lander is set to touch down on November 12th. The lander, Philae, is going to, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right as well, is going to separate from Rosetta, and it's going to take about 7 hours to go. I think it's about 14 miles. Let me check my notes. Some distance. It's about 14 miles from where Rosetta is now to the surface of 67P. So it's going to take 7 hours for it to land. When it does land, it's going to launch harpoons into it and then kind of like grab onto it to make sure that it doesn't fly away. If they're off by even a centimeter when they detach, they could completely miss the comet. So this has to be very, very exact. It's so far away that we're about 22 minutes delay time for the speed of light latency to get the signals from the comet back here to Earth. So first, we have to separate from Rosetta. Then we have to take 7 hours and make it down and just sit there looking at the telemetry, biting our fingernails going, oh, did it work? And then we have to launch it and try to grab onto this very, very rocky surface and hope that we can actually land. And if we're able to do that, if ESA, the European Space Agency, is able to do that, this will be the first time we've ever been able to land a craft on a comet. This is going to be awesome, and it's going to happen November 12th. I'm hoping ESA has some sort of live stream. If not, check our Twitter account. We're going to be tweeting about this. This is going to be absolutely remarkably cool. All right, speaking of remarkably cool, we're going to hand it over to Space Mike to talk about some SpaceX news. Space Mike, take it away.
Hello, everyone. So there are some very interesting things that have been developing. First of all, Elon Musk has been talking to a guy named Greg Weiler, who is a satellite industry vet. And what they're talking about is teaming up to launch internet service providers, or rather comsets that are just for internet service. And this is a really cool idea because this Greg Weiler guy, he started with a company called O3B, which they had some technical difficulties with their first 4 comsats that they launched, and due to those difficulties, the lifespan of those satellites weren't going to be as good as they were supposed to. So he left that company, but he's still a major shareholder. And then he approached Google, who has publicly stated that they want to provide internet to the entire globe, especially in remote areas. He worked with them, approaching them with his ideas and his goals of launching these smaller satellites that weigh less and are also cheaper to produce. And after about a year of being with them, he had doubts as to whether or not Google had the capability to manufacture these satellites. So he left them, and since then has been talking to Elon Musk. Now, this Greg Weiler guy has a company called Worldview Technologies Limited, and what this whole plan is for SpaceX and Worldview to team up to produce hundreds of low-cost, lightweight communication satellites to provide internet access. And SpaceX's role would, of course, be the launcher to launch these satellites, but they would also share cost and possibly build a factory where Worldview and SpaceX would be copying SpaceX's in-house manufacturing model that they have to bring down the cost. And they want these ComSats to be around 250 pounds. Right now, the smallest ComSat on the market is about 500 pounds and costs over $1 million to make. So they want to bring that cost down to less than $1 million and to have the weight down to around or less than 250 pounds. And by copying SpaceX's model of doing as much manufacturing and production in-house as possible, they potentially could bring the cost down on that. But not only that, due to the connections that both Elon Musk and Greg Weiler have, they're looking at lots of potential investors. I mean, both Google and Facebook has wanted to do something similar to provide low-cost access to communication satellites and provide internet to the entire globe. So there's a lot of interesting people in this, but it is important to note that as of right now, this is just a rumor. It isn't officially set in stone yet. Yes, Elon Musk and Greg Weiler both have admitted that they've been talking to each other, but this isn't set in stone yet. But if it does end up panning out, it could potentially be very good for the satellite industry if they're able to get the project moving along. If they don't launch their first satellite, for 10 years from now, then their market might be gone by then. So it's a very interesting development, and I, for one, hope that this sees some progress and they do team up. And I think it'd be interesting if they made a new company out of the two between SpaceX and Worldview. By the way, Worldview is the view is spelled with a VU. I think they should call it Exploration View or X View. That would be kind of cool. Anyway, so that is a very interesting thing about SpaceX and the satellite internet providers that they want to become.
I think there's actually one more rumor as well with F9 or Dev2, correct?
That is correct. There is a rumor going around that SpaceX has been wanting to do their Dev2 vehicle of the Falcon 9 reusable. They wanted to do test launches at Spaceport America. And Christine Anderson, who's the executive director of Spaceport America, has also said that they want to bring SpaceX in and several other potential people to lease out the Spaceport America to. They already are set up for sounding rockets. SpaceUp launches from there all the time. And to transition to the sort of facilities that would be needed for SpaceX to do their reusable launches from there, and this is not orbital, this is just a continuation of their test program here on the ground. This is not doing orbital launches from there, just more tests. With the recent crash, though, this is all kind of up in the air. Technically, Virgin Galactic still owns Spaceport America, but it's a very hazy legal situation since so much tax money is involved and investments that have been made by other companies as well. So SpaceX might go forward with this, and I really hope that they do continue to go forward with this so that Spaceport America hasn't been built for a complete waste. And I'm not saying that Virgin Galactic isn't and SpaceShipTwo is never going to fly, although just with the current situation, it kind of looks that way. So again, this is just a rumor. Both parties, Spaceport America and SpaceX, have publicly said that they wanted to do this, but again, there's nothing official yet. The contract haven't been signed. So very interesting, and I hope that pans out as well.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. All right, Space Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, and actually, before we let you go, where can people find your own channel? So if they want more information, they can watch you do your space geekery.
Absolutely. If you want to see more of my space geekery talking about everything else, then you can go over to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/OTMikhail, OTMikhail, or just type in Epic Future Space into the search bar, and you'll see my my face pop up.
Your mug. All right. Thank you, Space Mike. Moving right along, our last news item for today is the Delta IV Heavy for the exploration flight test number 1. I've got a picture. I don't actually have a picture of the real Delta IV during this, but here is a Delta IV Heavy with some other payload on top. So that's kind of what it looks like. There's a Delta IV Heavy. It performed a wet dress on November 5th. Now, what a wet dress is you run the countdown sequence and you load it with fuel as if you're going to launch it. You just don't actually launch it off the pad. This is a way to make sure that the vehicle is performing as expected and it's ready for its payload, and there won't be any delays on launch day itself. Orion itself, which is the payload that's going to go on top of it, is set to launch on December 4th. Now, Orion is NASA's next generation spacecraft designed to go beyond low Earth orbit. It's the first time we'll have a human-rated spacecraft capable of going to the moon, Mars, asteroids, essentially since Apollo. So this is going to be very cool. It's going to be a big deal. You're going to hear a lot about this from NASA. Now, EFT-1, which is the test that's going to happen on December 4th, is not a manned test program. It's going to be unmanned. It's going to go up. It's going to go, the apogee will be very, very high, so it's going to go very high up, and then they're going to spin it around and bring it right back down into Earth to test that heat shield. And I believe they're going to slam into the atmosphere at around 22,000 miles per hour, designed to simulate a Martian or lunar re-entry back into Earth. So this all happened at Space Launch Complex 37B, where the Delta IV Heavy will be launching. Orion normally will launch atop a Space Launch System, so the SLS that NASA is developing, this super heavy lift rocket. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, comments from our last show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome, future patrons of Tomorrow. If you're not familiar with who Tomorrow is, we're a live weekly webcast about the cosmos and human exploration of the stars. We'll feature things like rocket launches, we'll have guest interviews, we'll have amazing conversations about the cosmos, and of course an interactive chat room so that you can not only talk with other like-minded cosmic explorers, but also us, the hosts of the show, as well. And we're just generally excited about humans exploring space, and we're here on Patreon as a way to crowdfund the show itself, because this isn't something that a normal network would pick up, but it is something that a lot of us are really, really excited about. For those of you not familiar with Patreon, think of it like a recurring Kickstarter, a way for you to contribute to the show, but on a per episode basis instead of just once. You can contribute whatever amount you feel fit for these episodes, but once you start hitting that $1 mark, we're going to start giving rewards back to you. At $1, you'll get your name in the credits. At $5, you'll get your name in the credits. Plus, you're going to get a exclusive Google Hangout. At $10, you get even more stuff. Contribute what you feel is fair. Now, you know what I said, this is on a per episode basis, and we do have more than one episode per month. So if you want to make sure that you don't spend too much money per month, you can set an upper level cap. For example, you can contribute $5 per episode, but no more than $25 per month. Or you can contribute $1 per episode, but no more than $10 per month, whatever fits your budget. And if you'd like to see where your crowdfunded contributions are going, check out our goals. We're always getting new equipment. We're trying to do cool new things with social media. We're trying to do some amazing things in this space. And each goal helps us get closer and closer to realizing one of those new things. With the help of you, our patrons, we can make this show truly something special. And let me be the first to welcome you to Tomorrow. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, because Carrie Ann is not here, she can't take my pen away from me. So I will continue to play with this pen throughout the rest of the show, and you are just going to have to deal with it. For those who don't know what that is, you should be watching After Dark, because it's an awesome show. All right, well, I'd like to thank all the patrons of Tomorrow who helped make this segment happen. These are the Patreon Plus subscribers. So speaking of After Dark, anyone who's a Patreon Plus subscriber is going to have immediate access to After Dark after the show as soon as it's posted. There's no waiting for that. And you can get more information on that at patreon.com/TMRO. That's $3 and above at that subscription level. But we have more. We also have everyone who's contributed at the $1 level. These are our Patreon subscribers. These are people who have given $1 or more for this specific episode. And the new people for each one of these, the Patreon Plus, we've got Hunter, who is at the bottom of that, and Nicolaj, I believe, is how you say that. Hunter Nicolaj. Where the Patreon Plus subscribers new this week, and the patron subscribers that are new this week are Jacob and Mark, also at the bottom of that list. So thank you guys for becoming patrons of Tomorrow and helping to make this show go. Once again, completely crowdfunded show. every single dollar helps, and every level, a dollar and above, has a reward of sorts. All right, Carrie Ann's not here. Now I have to read these, so this will be interesting, me trying to read these myself, because we all know that I suck at this part. So here we go. All right, first up, Mini Elon. I should make Dutta read him. Mini Elon, he says, these accidents was freak, but I fear these accidents are going to happen more common as we push the human and commercial space industry further. That was on Reddit. Basically, the idea that this wasn't an expected accident. We didn't think that this was going to happen, but as we fly more and more humans, there will be more and more problems. And I would say, of course, right? The more you fly a vehicle, any transportation system, will have issues. You look at cars, you look at trains, you look at planes, you look at bicycles, you look at walking. Someone has died doing all of those things. And the more people you have doing those things, the more probability you have of someone dying doing it. It sucks. It's never desired, but that's just how it is, right? Accidents happen. Someone will die in space. That is it's not an if, but when that will happen. And that does suck, but we can't stop the industry. Imagine saying, hey, look, you could die on an airplane, so you can never fly. You could die in a car, so you can never drive. That's just not a realistic thing. Now, a lot of people look at space and go, well, yeah, but we don't need to go to space. I need to drive to work, but we don't need to go to space. But for most of humanity's time on this planet, you couldn't drive, you couldn't take a train, you didn't need to do any of these things. So I would argue that no, you don't need to do these things, but as these new frontiers open up, things change. And I think as the space frontier opens up, people will start to need to go to space, just like they need to drive to work today. And it will become a whole new industry in and of itself. And so, yeah, it sucks. All of this stuff can happen, but that's what comes with building a transportation system. There is always risks in getting from point A to point B. That's how it is. All right. Kelchiz, hopefully I said that right, says, the way you felt about the CNN coverage of the SpaceShipTwo disaster is about the same as I feel every time you mention Mars One, which is usually in a derogatory manner without giving sound arguments like you'd expect from a technology-driven show. Sure, you can disagree with their approach or argue that they won't be successful, but at the end, they are part of the space community and they deserve better than to become the butt of a joke. So please refrain from doing that. I don't think we really necessarily make them the butt of a joke, but we have serious concerns with most everything they're doing, timeline-wise, financially, and even plan-wise. None of it actually jives with a usable space transportation system to Mars. They say that they're in talks with different people, and you go to talk to those people, and they're like, not really. They say that they want to get a lander on Mars in 4 years, I think it is, but as far as I know, 4 or 6 years from now, as far as I know, they have not actually secured the launch provider for that. And those launch providers, you can't just walk up and say, hey, I'd like to launch next week. It's a multi-year process. So unless they have a launch provider ready to go by the end of 2015, they will miss that deadline. And those talks would have had to have already started. And when you kind of poke around the industry, it doesn't seem like those talks have really started. So there's just not a lot of good data here saying that Mars One is capable of doing what they say they're going to do. I hope they're able to do it, and I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that they can actually send humans to Mars. But it really feels like a bunch of people who don't understand what it will take to put humans on Mars, trying to make a show around it, or at least trying to make a product around it, and not realizing how incredibly difficult it will be. To be clear, today there is no spacecraft that can send humans to Mars. There's none that has ever launched that can send humans to Mars. There is not a launcher that they have that would be able to launch that fictitious spacecraft to Mars. And there is no actual viable plan for getting on Mars and actually being able to utilize those resources, which, by the way, we're not 100% sure of the resources on Mars yet. There's no viable plan for using the in situ resources on Mars to actually do anything. This is why we're overly critical of Mars One, because they're making a lot of promises that we don't feel that they can actually follow through with. And I think that's actually more harmful to the space industry than it is helpful. Just because you're part of the space community and say you have an idea, I can build a warp drive. If I keep saying that, that actually harms the space industry, doesn't help it. And that's why we're critical of Mars One. What I would like to do is bring, Boss on the show and actually have him talk about this. And I'll work on making that happen. But This is why we don't believe in Mars One. And I think that's real data. That's not just me saying, hey, I'm making stuff up. That's based on actual, like, here's what it takes to get out there, and they're not doing any of these steps. There you go. All right, end of that rant. And by the way, you're free to disagree with me. And as information changes, anyone in the space community is free to change their opinion. The idea that you have to stick with your one opinion and never change it, you know, if Mars One comes out tomorrow and says, look, here's our launcher, here's our spacecraft, here's how we're going to build it, and this is how we're going to survive on Mars, boom, I will change my tune immediately. I just need Mars One to do that. And they haven't done that yet. All right, moving right along. Fabio says, hi all, we are starting a group on rocket building, inspiring from what we saw from Copenhagen suborbitals. Here's the Reddit page, and there you can go /r/open source rocketry. And they also have a forum at opensourcerocketry.freeforums.net. And I love the idea that we did a show on Copenhagen suborbitals, and it got everyone pumped up with the idea that, look, mere mortals can do this. So if you are a mere mortal, like everyone, and you would like to help build a rocketry program, why not give it a shot? Head on over to Open Source Rocketry and see what you can do over there. That's pretty freaking cool. All right. On YouTube, Niosis says, it's been a sad week, but we'll be back with a vengeance. I completely agree. Now, Space Mike said he wasn't entirely sure that SpaceShipTwo would fly. I think the industry split half and half. Half of them think that it won't fly. I'm on the half that thinks that actually it will fly again. I think Virgin Galactic can bounce back from this. There's a lot of press and media that's critical of the business plan for Virgin Galactic. I think it's a multi-tiered approach. They've got a lot of big dollar billionaires, or at least big companies and billionaires behind them that are capable. If they choose to continue, I think they'll have the finances to do it. Now it's just a question of, was it a what was the failure state? And if they can figure out the failure state in a reasonable amount of time and fix that, and then test and make sure that it actually is safe, they may have something there. Remember, humanity has a very short memory. So in the year or so it's going to take to complete this NTSB investigation, and then the next year or so it's going to take to fix whatever they need to do, 2 years from now, will you actually really remember all of this as they're doing flight after flight after flight, assuming they're all successful? I don't know. So I'm in the camp that says I think Virgin Galactic can recover, and I think they can recover. This will make them stronger, and if they can actually find this issue and make the vehicle safer, that's all the better. But if there's a disaster of this level, you either need to you need to make it safer at that point. You need to learn from that. You need to learn a lot of lessons from that, and you have to make it safer, or you cannot fly the vehicle, in my humble opinion. All right, Star Cryex. Any ideas on how to say that, Dada?
I think you got
Star Cryex. All right.
as good a guess as mine.
I truly hope we push forward. I won't even bother to list the reasons why this is a must. All true gain comes with great risk. I salute both pilots and send prayers and well wishes to the families of the co-pilot that passed. Absolutely. You know, you look at test vehicles, and you know, this is what happens in test vehicles. You don't know what you don't know. And this seems like it was an unknown, and hopefully we'll be able to turn it into a known and fix this problem, and hopefully they'll be able to recover from that. Test pilots have a very, very dangerous job, and as proven, and loss of life always sucks. So I would argue, let's make it worth something. I would hate for them to have loss of life and then have the program terminate because of that. It feels like that would be the wrong message to take away from that. I know a lot of people in the space industry, we're all very passionate about this stuff. If it was me, and I'm not going to speak for him, but if it was me and that happened to me, I would not want the program to stop because of it. I would want it to fix the issue and forge on. I would hate to have my name be the reason why that happened. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else. Let me be clear on that. That's just me personally. So, all right. That was somber. All right, let's end the show on a happier note, which comes from Cameron, who says, "How is this show not bigger? It amazes. It is a great show. Keep up the good work." Yes, I do like the self-compliment. We did that. Carrie Ann pointed out, I've done this 3 weeks in a row now, where I did the comments that say, "You guys are awesome." But you know, it makes me feel good. We put a lot of work into the show, so thank you very much for appreciating it. That came off of YouTube. And if you've got comments from this week's show, whether you agree or disagree, keep it civil. right? You are allowed to disagree with me. That's absolutely allowed. You just post them anywhere you want. Reddit, YouTube, post it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want. And if it's a great comment, we'll bring it into the show. And as we proved in the comments, whether you agree with us or disagree with us, we'll bring you in if you have a good, valid point and you don't do name calling. Last week, we got into some name calling in a few comments. Let's stay away from that. We're better than that, guys. We can, and gals, we can do better. All right, that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. Stay tuned. After Dark is up next if you're watching live. Otherwise, if you're at the Patreon Plus subscription level, you're going to get a free access to that as soon as it's made available. Everyone else, that will be available in approximately 4 weeks. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.